Welcome everyone to today's class. It's been a minute, but I'm happy to be back. Today will be, I think the last time we met, we were looking at context API and some React hooks. So today we want to outsource state management, right? So I believe we should all understand what outsourcing means, right? So you're like handing over state management to an external library to manage for you, okay? So you're no more relying on use states or internal contexts that we created before. So we'll be looking at managing global states with Redux and Redux toolkits today, okay? So who has an idea of what Redux is? Quickly. You can use the text box. You don't need to unmute. Just quickly. Or you know what? Just raise your hand up and let's hear from you. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Okay, so I don't know it very well, but I think the time I checked about it, it was a higher way of storing, kind of the same way use context is used to store complex states. Redux is just like a more higher version that stores let's say states, so that can be used in different components of the React app.
Yes. So yeah, basically, Redux is like it's a library of its own, right? But it's created for managing states. So basically, Redux is a state management library, right? For managing and centralizing application state. So basically, you're thinking, okay, we want to keep all our state in one place, right? So like I explained about context, is in the same line with context. It's just that it's a little bit more advanced than context. So if you're looking at large applications, you are thinking Redux, right? But let's say you are looking at a scenario where you have like dashboards and a lot of other scenarios that you want to manage, API calls, everything, and probably the code bases are like really robust. You'll be thinking of a global state management tool, Redux, right? There are other state management tools, but we'll be focusing on Redux. So think of it like a global filing cabinet where you can store and retrieve app data from any component at any time. So basically, we are saying once we provide this Redux state management store to the whole application, we are going to be accessing it from anywhere in the application. We can access any kind of data that we are getting in that Redux reducer or store. We are going to be getting that data anywhere in the application. We can also take actions anywhere in the application, set state to anything, modify whatever kind of data we want to modify based on the kind of logic that we've written inside our Redux store or inside our reducers. So remember, it's useful basically when your app is like large. So when you are handling like 3 forms, right? You don't need to be thinking of Redux because it's too much engineering for an app with like 3 forms. Let's say like the tax we just handled, right? You're trying to change few forms and just manage the state of the form data. Something context can handle that easily, right? Because I know someone is going to ask, when do we use Redux and when do we not use Redux, right? So think about Redux when you are scaling, when you are trying to build an app that you expect to scale. You are trying to build something that you expect to become bigger and bigger, or it's already the scope of that application that you want to start building is already large. So there's a chance that you need to handle a lot of state management at one particular location, right? Are we together? So Redux consists of good. So Redux has what you call a store. Okay. So let's start with installing Redux. Okay. So I have installed Redux already. So what I'll do, like I always do, is drop the command for you to go ahead and do that installation. Now remember that you can also access the documentation, right? So here you can see the documentation for Redux, right? So you can go ahead and explore this documentation in your spare time. So Udo, you know what to do with the links when I drop them. So just do that. And then let's utilize this. I've already installed Redux in my application. So as you can see, I have Redux installed. And the toolkit also installed. Okay, let's go ahead. Let me drop the command. Yeah, I will. Hold on. I'll drop it down in the text box. I'm with you guys. So I'm typing, okay? All right. Yeah, so you can install with that command that I have sent. So first thing we do after installing Redux is to create our store, okay? So let's go ahead and create a new directory and call it store. Okay. So within this directory, we'll create a file called store.js. So now what you need to understand is first things first, the way Redux works, Redux has like a store. So picture the store as a warehouse where you are gathering all your states and then saving them in that warehouse so that when you want to access that state, you can, based on the based on the way you've saved it or the data name, right? You will be able to now go to that store and then access that stored data from the store. So first thing we do when we have the store is import configure store. From Redux toolkit. Okay. Are we together? Then we can now create our store. Okay. So let's say export, because definitely we want to export this store. Then we say const store is equals to configure store. And then now what we need to do now is attach all our reducers within this store that we've configured now. So let's go ahead. Let's move forward. Are we together so far? All right, cool. So now we are supposed to create a slice that is supposed to handle all our logic, right? Now that slice is where we are going to write all the logic for whatever we want to do that we want to save in this store. Then we can now bring that slice and save it in this store. Okay, so let's just create a file, new, and call it counter slice.js. Okay. So now what happens in this slice now? We want to create a slice, right? Remember that we are using Redux toolkit, okay? What we'll do now is import create slice. Create slice from Redux toolkit, okay? So now we can go ahead and create our slice. Now this slice we are creating now, we are trying to create a slice for a counter logic. Remember the name that we called it. So we are trying to create a counter function or a counter process, but we want to handle it using Redux, right? Now you say const counter slice equals to create slice. And then for that, we want to have this. Okay. So first thing we want to do is give this counter slice a name value. Okay, so if we give it name and we call it counter, then we want to give it an initial state. So understand that, remember that when you're working with use states, or when we're working with use states, there is always an initial state, right? Because let's assume we are working with use state now. We say const say count, and then set count. Right? We always give it an initial state. Correct? Of 0. Depends on what you want to give it as an initial state, correct? Because now what happens now is that we are updating this count, but we already have a default value for this count, which is 0. So in essence, what we need to do here now is just the same. It's like this name here is like naming this state. So we have named the state for this counter as counter. And then we are saying, okay, for this first initial state that we used to use in use state, we want to add initial state. And then for initial state, we want to give it a value of 0. Is it clear? Are we good? Can we go on? Okay. So for the benefit of those who don't understand, Udo says we should come again, right? So now, remember that in use state, we have initial state here. So when you are creating this state, when you are initializing this state value, we always set an initial state to it. Now for Redux, you need to expressly set the initial state of this particular Redux slice. So initially, before you have data or have set your count or do whatever you're trying to do, you must have set this initial state for initial rendering. Okay? Do you understand? Are we following everyone? Are we good to go? All right. Okay. Excellent. Yes. So it's just like this name here. Do you understand? This name is an identifier. It's just like the name implies. It's an identifier for that particular for this particular slice. Okay. Hold on, guys. Okay. Can we go on? All right. So now our next step will be to create our reducer. Okay. So to avoid confusion, right? A reducer is just a function that tells Redux how to change the state based on an action. Okay. So we are saying these reducers are like the description of the actions that should be taken. Josh, are you lost? Huh?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, where are you lost? Yeah.
I said you should come again with the reducer. What a reducer is.
Okay. Oh, definitely. I'm with you. Okay. So a reducer is a function that tells Redux how to change the state based on an action. Are you with me?
Yeah.
So you can think of it like a traffic officer. The actions come in, right? And then reducer checks the action and updates the state accordingly. Are you following? So let me try to explain it for that. So basically you're saying so we want to take this action, and when we take this action, so and so should happen to the state. So you should do so and so thing to update the state in so and so way. That is what you are using the reducer to do inside a slice. Are we together? Are we together? All right. Okay. All right. So now we can go ahead and add our reducers. So let's assume that because of what we are trying to create a counter, we want to first have an action to increment. We want to also have an action to reduce, right? We want to also have another action to increment by amount. Are we following? So what we're going to do now is write our logic for increment. So let's say increment, and we are saying for this initial state, we want to add 1 every time increment is triggered. Okay? We check the value and we want to add 1. Now for decrease, let's just say, decrease. We want to say state. And then we want to reduce this time, okay? So state dot value. Remember, this is the value we are assessing, okay? Inside the initial state, we're assessing these values, this value. So I want to say minus equals to 1, okay? Then for the last scenario, we want to increment based on a particular payload, right? So we want to say increment by amount. And then state so we want to say state and then action. Hold on, guys. State and action should be in parentheses. Okay. Then for state and action, we want to increment the state dot value and then add. Okay. So we want to add the payload. So the action dot payload is what we want to increment this value by. Okay. So we're saying whatever is added as a payload now is what we want to use to increment this value. Are we together? All right. Okay. All right. So now our next step will be, let's remove this from here. Our next step will be to export the actions so we can use them in our components. Okay. So first thing we want to do is export our increment, right? Decrease and this. So if you notice, you see the way it is showing as error, right? Like it's not supposed to, it's not correct. It's because we've not actually shown where we are retrieving this data from. So now remember that this is a slice that we created. Okay. So basically what the slice consists of is the name, right? The initial state, the reducer's function, and then it automatically it generates the action and the action creators. Yes, of course. There are use cases where you can do that at Redux, but just focus on what we're working on for now. Utilize the method that you're being taught now. So counter slice dot action dot actions. Okay. So what we're saying is we are extracting this from counter slice. So you say, why not just export the counter slice? Remember that what we've just done now is we don't need to start doing destructuring wherever we want to access this anymore. All we need to do now is import them. Do you understand? All we need to do now is import them because we have already exported them individually by destructuring them here. Udo, do you understand? Are we good? What's going on? Are we good, guys? Can we go on? Yeah, so this slice has already created, like it has already created the actions, okay? Like I said, when I was explaining the slice itself, the slice automatically generates the action creators. Do you understand? That is this slice that we've created here has generated these action creators that we've defined. These are the actions we want to take. This is an action, this is an action, this is an action. It has generated those actions now. So what we are saying, we want to access these actions within this slice. That's why when we said counter, we access the actions themselves within the slice. Do you understand? Yes, okay. All right, so let's go ahead and bring our slides into our store, okay? But for us to do that, we will need to export our slice. So let's say export default counter slice dot reducer. Okay. All right. So remember that basically what we want to save in our store is this. It is the whole of this slice, right? So now we are saying, okay, let's export the slice with the reducers for these slides, for this slice, right? So when you hover on the reducer, you see that the reducer is exporting this value that we want to save, this state. Okay, remember that all these actions that we are taking here is because we want this state to be saved in our Redux store. So when we are exporting it now, we're exporting that particular reducer. So basically, we are saving the value inside the store. So whenever there's action that triggers that value to have changes, we are saying, okay, this new value should be updated using the Redux action that we have already created. And then the new value should be saved to the store. So you had only one carton of Pepsi in your warehouse. Now you're saying, okay, now I have brought 20 cartons of Pepsi, and I want to update my inventory in that warehouse. So the action now is carrying that Pepsi and going into the warehouse to drop it, correct? Now, as soon as you carry that Pepsi into the warehouse and drop it inside that inventory and update that inventory, automatically, anytime another person comes to that store, which is another component, anytime another person comes to that store, to check that very inventory, what the person sees is not the initial value anymore. The person is now seeing the updated value, which is the new number of cartons that you have added to that inventory. Do we understand? So Josh, I think you had your hand up. Let me hear from you.
Actually, I'm confused because I didn't understand the explanation that you just gave now, and also
Okay, let
when
me,
you talk
okay.
about I'm
Yeah,
coming
and
when
also,
you said something like when you are trying to export these increments decrements, right? I think remove
mhm,
this, yeah, yes, increment. So you called it counter slice dot action. So you called increment decrement and increment by amount counter slice dot
mhm,
action. And then
mhm.
counter slice dot reducer. Aren't they the same? Counter slice dot reducer is also targeting is going to target the increment, decrement, and increment by action at the later end because when you want to use
So
it, I guess.
yes, yes, I understand your question. So let me clarify. So just look at it with the terms that are being used. Okay? Understand that what is happening on this line, we are exporting actions on this line. Are you with me? On this line, we're exporting the reducer, the value. Do you follow?
Yeah.
So what's happening here now is you understand what destructuring is. We've done this severally. That's why we took it early. So we are destructuring this particular action, slice dot action. We are destructuring the actions because as soon as we created Okay. Hello, acknowledge you can hear me, guys.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Yeah, but you can hear me now clearly, better. Can you see my screen? All right. Okay. All right. Apologies. That was some network issues. Let's go on. So do you understand now? Josh, do you understand what I was explaining before I went off the call? Hello, Josh. All right. Okay. So basically, understand that what we are doing here, we are exporting. Yeah. So we are exporting the actions here. Okay. At this stage, we're exporting the actions. Just like you see, we have accessed the counter slice, right? And then we are exporting the actions. Which are these actions that we have defined that have now been created, right, by our slice, okay? Those actions that have been generated now by our slice, okay? Now, over here now, we are exporting the reducer. In essence, we want to now save this reducer to our store. So when we want to access these particular actions now, we'll be accessing these actions based on this exportation, right? But we want to now save this slice to our store, which is why we are now exporting the reducer to save that reducer to our store. So if we come here, right, and import our reducer, we can call it counter. Okay, so we can call it counter, and then we can bring in our counter reducer, then import it. Import counter reducer from okay. So as you can see, we have our value. Our reducer has been imported here, okay? All right, so now basically what we've done now. Yeah, so as it is right now, we don't really need the initial. So let me explain that, okay? So when you look at this now, you see that this reducer has a value. That's the value that we want. Initial value is just for us to make sure that there is a value that exists initially, okay, which is part of Redux. So what happens now is this value is being stored now in our store. So whenever we take actions, whichever action we take here, that action updates that value that has been stored now in our store. Okay, so we don't necessarily need to pick the initial value and display it anywhere. As far as we now have that value, we can access that value within our component. Okay. So I think for this value, this initial value is now, just when we get to that point, you understand how like it will start coming together. and you start understanding, okay, how to utilize that incremented value or decremented action, right? And then how to also assess the actual count. Okay, now let's go ahead and provide this store to our application quickly. Okay, so if we go to app.jsx now, okay, let's do it at the main. Good. So remember that when we have our when we work with we had a provider, we created this provider for Chakra UI, right? When we're working with Chakra UI. Okay, so basically what we want to do now is implement a provider for our Redux store. Okay, so let's change this so that we don't have conflicting names. Okay, let's keep it here and replace this. Okay, so let's import our provider from Redux. So we're importing provider from Redux, okay? And then we are providing the store, which is our store that we created. So remember that we also exported that store. We exported this store, so over here, we can easily import the store and use it as our provider. We all understand what it means to provide, right? So I don't need to explain this anymore. So let's add this here. So what we have done now is we have provided this store to all the components that are being utilized within this application. Okay. So what happens now is anywhere we want to utilize the stored content of our counter slice, we can easily access it and utilize it. Are we together? Now let's go ahead and utilize our counter. Okay. This one, correct? Can I go on? Can I move on? Oh, okay. Can we go on? Are we good? Everyone? Joshua, are we good? Dave? Dave
Yeah,
Amosu, are we
we're
good?
good.
Yeah. Michelle, I didn't even notice Michelle was on the class. Michelle was on the call. Michelle, are we good?
Yes, we are good, sir.
Okay. Boluwatife, you've been quiet today. Excel, are we good? Is Excel with us? Okay, all right. Okay. All right, let's go on. So let's go ahead and utilize this content in our application, okay? So let's pick a component to work with. Let's work within our dashboard, okay? So I'll remove this for now, and I'll take this out too, and take this out for now, okay? So we are not, to avoid confusion, okay? Let's have a plain working field. Okay, I'll look at that. I'll look into that suggestion, Josh. All right, so now we want to remember we created a counter slice, okay? So basically what we want to do is we want to increment the value, we want to reduce that value depending on the action we are taking, right? And then we also want to increment the value based on the particular number that we give to that value. So what we will do first is to import our actions, okay? So let's import, we add increment from our slice, and then we also had reduce, was it reduce or decrease? Okay, decrease. Okay, and then we can also bring in the last action. So now that we have our action, we want to assess our values, right? That is the value of the initial value that Josh asked about. So in this scenario now, what we're going to do is we're going to say import use selector. So now use selector is a hook. So use selector is a hook, right? That is gotten from, that is provided by Redux. Okay. Good. So use selector is a hook that is provided by Redux. Use dispatch is also a hook provided by Redux. So now what we use dispatch for is to dispatch the actions. So is to implement the actions. Use dispatch is for implementing the actions. Okay. While use selector is for retrieving data from our slice. Okay. So if we come here now and say const count equals to use selector, and then for that selector, we want to check the state, and then want to assess. So remember that this state that we are checking, this state that we are checking is the global state presently, right? So we are checking the global state, and for this global state, we are looking for our counter, this name that we call this particular, which is also here, right? So this is what we are trying to assess inside this store. We are trying to assess the present state of this counter over here. Over here, okay? Are we together? So now if we console log this count, we should have 0, ideally, in our console. Okay, so let's go ahead and explore. So let's see our console. Let me increase this so that people will be able to. Good. Okay, so okay, so we have an error. Let's debug that line 5. Mm. This one is here. So, okay, hold on, guys. Give me a minute. Oh, we are way beyond time, man. Started late today. Um, Okay, so I think we've gone past our time. I've just got a notification that we need to shut down. So we'll pick up from where we've stopped, right? I'm going to try to see how we can set up a class for tomorrow so that we can cover up. Okay. So
So please, a quick question. I asked a question on the chat, please.
I've seen it. Yes, I've seen it. We'll handle it. Okay. So like I said, we are beyond time and I've had a notification. So we'll look at other things in our next class. I'll try to set up a class for either later tonight or tomorrow. Hopefully, if we are able to get a slot, we should be able to have another class later today or have another class tomorrow so that we can cover up. Okay. This is not something we can cover in 1 hour. Are we together? Are we good? So don't just keep your questions, write them down, and then we'll continue in the next class. Thank you guys. And have a great day. All right. All right.
So can I end the call? I think I was made the host when you left.
Yes, please go ahead. Yes. Just no, don't end the call. Just give me the host privilege. Yeah, thank you.
I want to take you hospitality. How? Because I don't really
Okay.
know the way around this.
Okay.
Okay, I should end it.
I wanted to be sure that our recording is being saved. Okay, don't worry, don't end it. Let me tell you what to do. So go to The panel below.
I should go where?
You see, go to where you have participants.
Okay.
You then come to where my name is, and then click
Okay.
on more.
Okay. Make hosts, yeah.
So exactly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.